Hello, I'm Matteo, the Chief Mobile Opinionist here at Tech Travel Geeks, and this is the side-by-side comparison between the Google Pixel 7a here on my left in the lovely coral colour, and the Google Pixel 8a here on the right-hand side in the aloe colour. These are two of the smartphones from Google's mid-range or more affordable range of smartphones within the Pixel family of products. The Google Pixel 7a is the A-series device from 2023, whereas the Google Pixel 8a is the A-series device for 2024. There's a year between the two devices, but there are some significant differences you should be aware of, especially if you're considering the two and you're considering one or the other. And we'll get into that, in particular in the part where we get into software updates. In terms of hardware, they're pretty similar. The Google Pixel 7a has a glass screen, metal structure and a plastic back, and the same can be said for the Google Pixel 8a. Glass screen, metal sides, plastic back. The difference is that the Google Pixel 7a has a glossy finish plastic back, whereas the Google Pixel 8a has a nice matte finish plastic back. And I have to say, overall, I do prefer the Google Pixel 8a. And whilst we have these two devices side by side, it's also important to bear in mind that there's some significant industrial design differences between the two. Everything is on the same template, but the Google Pixel 8a has been refined, as in it has slightly more rounded edges and it has slightly more rounded corners. Whereas with the Google Pixel 7a, everything's a little bit flatter. The radius of those corners on the Google Pixel 7a, while still being rounded, is much narrower. So it's a very different device to hold in your hand. It's not something that's easy to compare side by side, but it's one of those things that you do feel when you're holding them. The Google Pixel 8a feels lighter. It sort of fits in your hand better than the Google Pixel 7a. But as usual, I do recommend you have cases with your phones, and we've covered cases for both the Google Pixel 8a and the Google Pixel 7a here on the Tech Travel Geeks YouTube channel, so do check those out. But without cases on, it is a significantly different way of holding them. They feel different in your hand. I have to say, the Google Pixel 8a feels lighter. It feels just generally a much more refined device because of that extra rounding that goes on it. Anyway, in terms of the devices, they're very similar when it comes to their bodies, but as I said, different industrial design makes quite the difference from an ergonomic standpoint. Now, both devices have nice OLED displays at the front. Both devices have fingerprint scanners built into the screen. And I have to say, they're both 6.1-inch screens. They're very pleasant to use. They're not too big, they're not too small. They're really nice and bright, very usable in direct sunlight. But what I would say is, the Google Pixel 8a has definitely ramped things up in terms of its overall screen experience. Now, the Google Pixel 7a has, as I said, a 6.1-inch display. It's 1080 by 2400, so it's a full HD plus display. And it's made with Corning Gorilla Glass 3, just as the Google Pixel 8a. But the main difference is that this has a 90 Hz refresh rate. By default, that's off in display settings. You need to go and change that in your settings. But once you've done that, you will be able to see the difference when you're smoothing. There you go. That's when you're scrolling through menus. So by default, it comes on at 60 Hz. But once you turn that 90 Hz screen on, things do feel buttery smooth. Whereas the Google Pixel 8a has that preset default on the smartphone, which sets it at 60 Hz or 60 Hz. But once you've changed that setting, you go up to 120 Hz, so it's even smoother. It's even more pleasant to use in day-to-day use. Now, obviously, both of these phones, once you turn on the higher refresh rate, will have slightly degraded battery life. It does take extra computing power to have that high-speed, high refresh rate screen. But the Google Pixel 8a has a faster screen refresh, 120 Hz, as well as having a brighter screen. So it can go up to 2000 nits at peak brightness, whereas the display of the 7a is a bit less bright in direct sunlight. Now, obviously, both displays are capable of showing HDR content. So if you're watching video on YouTube or Netflix, where HDR is supported on the smartphone, you'll be able to make the most of that. So display-wise, the Google Pixel 8a is definitely a step up, but that doesn't necessarily mean the Pixel 7a has a bad screen. In day-to-day use, I really enjoy using these, mainly because they have flat screens. They are not curved screens at the edges. And I have to say, in day-to-day use, I do prefer that over the curved screens of, say, the Google Pixel 7 Pro or the Honor 90 or any other device in this category. Having that flat screen really does make quite a difference. Now, obviously, these are Google Pixel devices. They're from Google. This is where Google showcases the latest version of Android and shows everyone what their vision of Android is. The Google Pixel A series, the 7a and the 8a, are no different. This is where you'll get the latest version of Android. It's where Google really optimizes hardware and software to give you the best overall experience. And whereas the Google Pixel 7a came originally with Android 13, it has been promised 3 major upgrades of Android since then. So it should go all the way up to Android 16. So that's the 2025 version of Android, and further in terms of security updates. Whereas the Google Pixel 8a is the first device that Google has launched, which came with Android 14, but they've offered 7 years of updates. That takes you all the way to 2030. Just have a think about that. 7 major Android upgrades. Now, this may be due to the fact that the Google Pixel 7a has the Google Tensor G2 chipset, the second generation of the Tensor chipset, which was a 5nm processor, whereas the Google Pixel 8a has a Tensor G3 processor, which is built on the 4nm process. It has a different setup overall. So the Google Pixel 7a has an octa-core chipset. That means it has 8 hamsters running the show, whereas the Google Pixel 8a has a 9-core chipset, so it has an extra core to make all the magic happen. And it also has a different graphics card, a different GPU. So overall, the Google Pixel 8a is a much more capable device. Google have promised support for much longer for it. So well done, Google, in that. The Google Pixel 8a is definitely a winner here. So we've covered the basics. In terms of the operating system, it's Android. It's the pure version of Google's operating system. It's clean, it's simple, it doesn't come with any bloatware. This is why I choose to have Google Pixel devices. In terms of another thing that I think makes quite the difference, the cameras. So the Google Pixel 7a brought about a big change in the A series of devices and delivered, in this case, a really good camera. It's an impressive camera for its price category. It's a 64 megapixel sensor, it's a wide-angle lens, it has optical image stabilization, and all of Google's clever software that optimize taking pictures in whatever lighting conditions, applying computational photography to give you the best photos that are out there in this price category. And I have to say, Google threw it out of the ballpark for the price category at the time with the Google Pixel 7a in 2023. With the Google Pixel 8a, on paper, things look pretty much similar. It's a 64 megapixel sensor, it has optical image stabilization, but the real difference is that it has a slightly different setup in terms of its aperture. So it's an f/1.9 aperture on the Google Pixel 8a, whereas the Google Pixel 7a had the same aperture. But there is some differences in the hardware that I think make the Pixel 8a a slightly better camera in that respect. And both devices have a 13 megapixel ultra-wide camera as well, so you get two cameras on this smartphone. There's no telephoto lens, but because you have such a high resolution sensor, 64 megapixel one on both, digital crops are pretty usable on these devices. Anyway, the cameras are great in everyday use, point and shoot, without having to think about settings, composition. The Pixel devices are really second to none in that ease of use and taking really good pictures. If you want to mess around with a tripod and doing night photography, you can do so. You can even do astrophotography on these devices, which is pretty amazing. I would recommend, if you can, trying that out if you get a Google Pixel A series device, or even one of the other Pro or non-Pro devices. Google's camera setup is something that is really, really good in my view, and which specifically gives you a reason to purchase it for travel, for taking really good pictures. We are the tech travel geeks, after all. And in terms of selfies, both devices have 13 megapixel selfie cameras. They take decent shots. I'm nothing to complain from me on that category. So cameras, software, hardware, we've looked at pretty much everything. Both devices take physical nano SIM cards in European markets and in the US, and both devices can also at the same time support a second SIM card using the eSIM standard. I have used those whilst traveling, specifically Iralo, and it works for me. I'm really quite happy with it. So for traveling, eSIM capability, good way to save money when visiting places where potentially your roaming charges are very high. And if you haven't already, you can watch our videos on how to switch data roaming on or off on the Google Pixel A series devices. Now, when traveling, one thing that is quite important is your battery life. Both the Google Pixel 7a and Google Pixel 8a have decent battery life. It's nothing exceptional, especially in heavy use. It will run down quite quickly, and you may struggle to get through a day. But the Google Pixel 8a does have a much higher capacity battery. So this is closer to 4,500 milliamp hour battery for the Google Pixel 8a, whereas the Google Pixel 7a is a 4,400 milliamp hour battery. So it does have a bigger, more capable battery. Both devices can do relatively fast charging at 18 watts. It's not the fastest charging out there, but it is a useful thing in a situation where you need to quickly charge your phone. It's not as fast as some of the devices that charge at 120 watts, but it's pretty decent. And both the Pixel 7a and the Google Pixel 8a support wireless charging. This is really handy if you're in a place where you have a wireless charger on a desk or on your bedside table when you're in a hotel that has those facilities. But it's also handy if you have wireless chargers around the house. I have slowly converted to wireless charging, so I'm quite happy with that. Anyway, in terms of battery life, as I said, these two devices are not battery champions as others we've seen in this price category, but they perform very well. Nothing to complain about. In terms of pricing, both bounce between that £400 to £500 price range. Obviously the Google Pixel 7a is now the older device. You can currently pick it up from some places at around about £250. I'll leave some links in the description to where you can purchase the Google Pixel 7a and the Google Pixel 8a from Amazon. As usual, those are affiliate links, so you'll be supporting the Tech Travel Geeks if you do purchase from there. And as usual, if you want to support us, if you want to see more of our content covering smartphones, gadgets, accessories, and anything we think makes the travel experience better, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. We also cover fashion, and we've got quite a few popular shorts at the moment here on YouTube. And if I haven't been clear, if there's something you'd like to know, please do leave a comment in the section below and I'll do my best to get back to you. But overall, the Google Pixel 8a is a better all-round device. And I'm not saying that as a pun because the physical device is slightly rounded. It is just all-round a really improved device. On paper, the specifications may not look that different, but the overall experience on the Google Pixel 8a is definitely a step up. But if you already have a Google Pixel 7a, it might not really be worth upgrading for the next year or two in this case. There might be a Google Pixel 9a next year, so it might be worth waiting for that. But if you're on the market at the moment, looking at the 7a and the 8a, on paper, they look very, very similar. I would definitely spend the extra money on the Google Pixel 8a just because of that 7 years of software support on this device. Anyway, thank you very much if you made it this far into the video. As I said earlier, if you have any questions, if you'd like to know more, please do leave us a comment in the section below. And again, thanks for watching if you made this far. Goodbye from me.